Hello and welcome to the Emily Inkpen 12,000 Twitter follower Q&A. If you've never been here before for one of these, basically for every 1,000 Twitter followers that I get, I give everybody the opportunity to ask me anything and do one of those. You're all awesome. So I want to start off by saying a huge thank you to all of you who follow me. It's my absolute pleasure to interact with you on the daily on Twitter. You're amazing people, and I've made so many friends and found so much inspiration being part of the Twitter writing community. You keep me going. You really do. So thank you. I'm going to start off by saying that. There are times as a writer when you can feel quite isolated, and with the writing community that's just not the case. I just don't, which is wonderful. It's amazing. It's one of the gems of the internet, and definitely a gem of Twitter, because Twitter can be mean. Yep. So I've also got to say thank you for some amazing questions. And I guess we should just get on with it. So, question number 1. Have you ever been likened to Elaine from Seinfeld? No. No, I have not. Never. Okay, next question. If you could have a superpower, what would it be? Okay, well that's reasonably easy. I'm very clumsy, so I think my superpower, I would like to be indestructible. Not necessarily stronger or faster, but just impervious. That would be nice. As I get older, I'm becoming more and more cautious and aware of how dangerous silly accidents can be. So yeah, being impervious would help with the anxiety a lot. So yeah, I think that's a decent superpower to choose. Would you have a secret identity to save the world? No. No, I would not. I think if you've got a power and you're going to be throwing it around, the least you can do is own it. I think that's why Iron Man is so compelling, because, you know, at that press release they were all saying, oh yeah, just deny that you're Iron Man. And he's like, no, I am Iron Man. It's who I am. And, you know, he's not like Batman. He's not like all of these people who just have an identity and wear the mask. He is exactly who he says he is. Respect. And it means that he's got this accountability, you know, like he screws things up. Everyone knows he's Tony Stark. What the hell? You know, he's not hiding. I respect that. Okay, would we be a superheroine team and fight crimes at night? Yeah, sure. Why not? What else am I going to do with all my weakling imperviousness? Just call me Captain Scarlet. Captain Scarlet, by the way, brilliant cartoon show. It's not really a cartoon, it was in the days of puppets, like Thunderbirds era, and basically the intro was indestructible hero, and yet every episode ended on the cliffhanger of, will Captain Scarlet survive? Spoilers, he's indestructible. But as a kid, I was like, oh, I don't know, will Captain Scarlet survive? It was genuinely stressful as a kid, and now I look back on it and I'm like, well, of course he was going to survive. He's the indestructible hero. He literally can't die. Yeah, so there's some kid logic for you, or lack of logic. Okay, what jobs have you worked so far in your life? Okay, so this is fun. Right, okay, so before and during university, I worked in a cafe. Then I was a checkout person for a few years, part-time. Then more waitressing, etc. Things along those lines, which really sucked. I hate working in hospitality. The management structure and the little squabbles and petty injustices and that go on in that sector wherever I've worked when I've been a waitress, it's just been exhausting. So yeah, my experiences in that sector have not been good for that. I did some acting and modelling freelance work while I was at uni too, so a couple of one-offs in that field. After graduating, I did a couple of internships in publishing. I did international rights management at one place, and I worked at a local newspaper for a week, I think, in an internship. Then I got a job as an admin assistant at this little tiny software agency, and they were making the Babylon Health app, which nowadays is actually quite well known. They've worked with the NHS to bring like healthcare GP services to your phone. Actually, a pretty good service. Like you can book a doctor's appointment and have it the same day, and they'll send you a prescription to, your pharmacy up the road, and you can collect it on your lunch break. You can have a doctor's appointment at work. It's really, really cool. Or at least it was when I was working there, and I've had good reports from people who have used it as their GP surgery. So yeah, I worked, they were making that, and I got hired by Babylon as a content copywriter, and that was my first proper copywriting job. Then I got my first medical writing job from that, because Babylon Health is a health app working with GPs in the healthcare sector. So then I went into medical writing. Then I went to be head of content at a small elderly care startup, which was a great experience. Then back into medical writing, and now I'm a copywriter for Marmalade Game Studio. So I skipped industries entirely, got into the gaming industry. No regrets, writing for pharma. Yeah, I'm a creative person. I was always a square peg in a round hole in that industry. Loved it. Science was really interesting and fascinating. It's definitely actually affected my writing, because my sci-fi tends to be quite biologically based. It's not robotics or whatnot. It's about genetic engineering and biological engineering. So it's definitely affected that and inspired that to some degree. But now that I'm at Marmalade, it's where I belong. So I'm very happy with that shift. And that brings us up to date. If you weren't a writer, what non-writing career would you pursue? Oh, that's really hard. Actually, no, it isn't. No, I always wanted to be an actress, and I used to be pretty good at it when I got my head out of my arse and put some effort into it. I like to think I could do a good job if I worked at it. It's hard. It's a hard art to practice. It really is. And doing it definitely helped with my writing and characterization too. And also now that I'm writing more scripts for audio drama and everything, like having any kind of experience acting, it's really, really helped with that. So very happy that I got that experience. And yeah, I still do like doing the cameo roles in my audio drama, but I would not call myself an actress anymore. I think to get back to where I was able to sort of like really sink into a character, it would take work. It's a hard profession. Yeah, it's an interesting profession. It's very psychologically draining at times, but I loved it. And I guess it does tie into my writing. As I say, characterization, script writing, all of these things, it's highly creative. So it's not necessarily surprising that if I wasn't a writer, I would definitely gravitate towards that as a preferred profession. What is the most fantastic death scene you have ever thought of / seen? For me, the best so far is The Good, the Bad and the Ugly final shootout. That's a good one. For me, a death scene is only powerful if it really means something. So if you've invested in the characters, and that you're involved enough for it to hit you in the feels, for that reason it's got to be a specific death in my trilogy that happens, and I can't tell you what it is because that would be a huge spoiler, but there is a death of a character, and it's not nice. It's quite brutal and unpleasant, and it was one of those where I wrote it and I was just like at the end, in a good way. It was like, I need a drink, Actually, on that note, Cheers. It's actually 9:30 here in the UK right now. I don't want everyone thinking I'm a massive louche. It's quite late that I'm recording this, so cheers everybody. Yeah, can't tell you any more than that because spoilers, but there we go. What is your name? What is your quest? What is your favourite colour? My name's Emily Inkpen. My quest is to tell stories and create worlds. And my favourite colour is the colour of labradorite, or labradorite, or the name of that stone. It's like that teal blue colour that is, it's really pretty. So that colour, kind of teal blue. It sounds so pretentious. Why don't I just say blue? Because blue's boring and teal blue is so much more interesting. So yeah, that's the truth. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Okay, so I did look this up. It's roughly 20.1 miles per hour for the African swallow. Now, actually, there's an amazing write-up of this that I found, and the link is in the description down below. Check it out for ultimate nerdery. Yeah, but roughly 20.1 miles per hour. The question has been answered. Okay, if you had the chance to make one of your characters exist in the real world, who would you choose to bring to life and why? This is tricky. My characters are mostly terrifying, so yeah, okay, I've just watched Avengers Age of Ultron, and so I'm feeling a bit destructive and flippant right now. So let's just say Isra. I say once she's done tearing me to pieces, the lumps of my carcass could see how she'd tear the rest of the world apart, and yeah, that could be fun. So yeah, sure, Isra. She'd go for me first, definitely. Right, what song best captures the feel of your trilogy? That's hard. There's a few, and I'll link below as well. So League of Legends Warriors song is particularly apt. Halsey, Castle, The Pretty Reckless, Going to Hell. that song is really that's very Isra, that song, all the way through. So is Castle, honestly, by Halsey. So those three spring to mind. And yeah, I'll link you below. I've got playlists for all of my kids, and each has a very different feel. But there are songs that they all have in common across the board. And if you're into that kind of thing, like collections of songs and, different feelings through playlists, I'll link in the description below. This is going to be a theme. Links in the description below, always. Okay, out of books 1 to 3, which do you love most? And this is regards to the Dex Legacy, my trilogy that I just finished writing, which is very exciting and also was incredibly draining emotionally. So I'm still sort of from that. So out of books 1 to 3, which do you love the most? Weirdly, it's probably book 2, which is normally the tricky one. It's like the awkward middle child. But it's a real journey. And in book 2, it's like all of the characters are stretching as far as possible, ready to ping. There's like just this, like who they are and where they're going and how they're developing as individuals is just drawing out throughout book 2. And at the end of book 2, they're kind of at their most stretched, and there's just this amazing amount of tension and energy in the story at that time, and I love it. Book 3 basically picks up the day book 2 ends, so there's literally just like an hour, 2 hours or something between the end of book 2 and the beginning of book 3 that take place time-wise, and and then obviously everything starts to unravel. I mean, it's book 3, but at the end of book 2, it's like, and it's so tense. I really love book 2 for that reason. What's your favourite part of the writing process? Weirdly, it's editing. After the first draft, I like to step back, look at the monster I've created, and I like to get in there and sort of complete the circuits, ready to like plug it in and bring it to life properly. That's probably the best kind of, I don't know, analogy is like a Frankenstein's monster. It's alive! You've got to like get in there and fine tune it, and then you can give it life, get it walking. But yeah, I love that process. It's really involved and great. And yeah, it's my favourite. Every time I go back over my book, I feel like my books, I feel like it gets better and better and better, and I love that feeling. Absolutely adore it. So, yes, editing. Do you like chocolate cake? Weird question. Of course I like chocolate cake. Oh, who doesn't like chocolate cake? Who doesn't like chocolate cake? Not this girl. I love chocolate cake. Weird question. Who would win in a fight? A werewolf or a badger? But the badger is also a ninja. Well, then the badger. Because the badger is also a ninja. No brainer. Okay. What sauce do you put on your bacon butty? HP. Next question. If you could only write one format, audio drama or novels, in the future, which would it be? Not fair. Not cool. Not a cool question at all. For those of you who don't know, the Dex Legacy trilogy that I've been working on is also, there is an audio drama that is set 11 years before book one, all of the same characters, all of this, it just spans this long timeline. Now I've got an audio drama series that's coming out featuring all of the main characters that appear in the trilogy, but just much younger and exploring events in their past that really shape them as individuals, making them the adults they become in the books. And I've absolutely loved writing the audio drama format. Part of me wonders if I only love it so much because I know these characters inside out because of the books. Maybe. But now I've had some practice at writing scripts, which is itself its own discipline. I'm pretty sure I could carry it across to things like to stories and characters that I'm less familiar with. They tend to get really detailed in my mind anyway, so I don't think I'd necessarily have too much of a problem doing that. I'm not going to pick one. Damn it. I love both. But I do really love writing the audio drama, which I did not see coming. I mean, it was one of these things I was writing, I think I was on book 2 when Chris Gregory of the Alternative Stories and Fake Realities podcast got in touch and was like, I've read a couple of your short stories on your website, you know, would you like to write something for us? And I wrote this one-off episode that was like a key event in the history of these characters that I had in my book. And it did really, really well. And yeah, it's just sort of, it's gone from there and I love it. But yeah, I think I lost my train of thought there. I think I did. But I really love working with the actors and collaborating, and it is so rewarding, and it's a whole different writing experience to writing novels, which can be quite insular, or is normally quite insular and lonely. But yeah, writing for audio drama is not that. It's very open and collaborative, and I love it. I love it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Classic interview questions. I actually can't answer it. I can't answer this question. I've never been able to. My dad was diagnosed with cancer and died 3 years later. And you literally can't see where your life is going to take you in 5 years. It's probably a good thing that you can't see where you're going to be in 5 years, to be honest. Like, we're in it for the ride and for the surprises, the bumps and scrapes and all the stuff along the way. and I'm kind of like, bring it. But yeah, I've never been able to say, oh, I have a 5-year plan or I have a 10-year plan, because my sense that I would definitely have 5 years or 10 years, it was taken away from me when that happened with my dad. Luckily, when I get that asked in interviews, when I go to interviews and they do ask me that question, I tell them exactly that, and they move on and they don't question it any further, because nothing makes somebody move on like saying, I can't answer that question because my dad died of cancer. And then they go, okay, right, moving on. You know, you can't argue with that answer. It's good, because I'm not going to answer it. Why do they sell hot dogs in packs of 6 but buns in packs of 4 or 8? I think it's actually an elaborate conspiracy. So, you know, you have to buy 2 packs of hot dogs and 3 packs of 4 buns to make it work. I don't make the rules, but they've got it taped. They really have. You know, how to make you buy more stuff. That's how they do it. Yeah, you probably find far back along the line, the same people who own the hot dogs own the buns as well. And it's all just, you know, conspiracy theories. Right, next question. If you could brew a potion to do a magical task, what would it do? And what would its ingredients be? Okay, so what is a magical task? Or are we completing a task magically? Because a magical task would be to cast a spell or to make a potion. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't brew a potion to make a potion. That would be silly. So I guess we're going to talk about completing a task magically. So I'm going to be really, really predictable here. I'm going to say it would give me the ability to fly, or the ability to breathe underwater, actually. Either of those two. So for flying, I imagine the ingredients would have to be super lightweight. We're going to go with a like George's Marvelous Medicine style recipe for this. So I'm going to say candy floss mixed with helium, trapped inside Rice Krispies. All very lightweight, and I think that would help. For breathing underwater, we need air in liquid. So I would say mousse, some kind of like chocolate mousse, mixed with lemonade, all held within a meringue. There we go. I don't know if that's what you had in mind. I don't know if you expected an actual recipe there, but that's what you're getting. Okay, as a sci-fi writer, do you enjoy sci-fi TV? I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Yes, I love sci-fi TV. Star Trek has been a feature of my life since forever, really. Same with Star Wars. Stargate is awesome. I'm a huge fan of all of it, from like SG-1 to Stargate Universe, except season 1, episode 3 of SG-1, because that is a travesty and should never be seen by anybody. But apart from that one episode, it's all brilliant. And I love all of the sci-fi movies too. I'm literally a sucker for this stuff. I really am. So yeah, all of it. Next question. Since when have you started posting for Emily's, and what's the real logic behind it and the inspiration? Okay, so this is the 4 photos thing that I do every Friday, where I have like a tile of selfies of me, 4 of them. And that thing started out as a Friday feelings in lockdown. That's what it always was. I say happy Friday now, but it used to be Friday feelings in lockdown was what I called it every single week. And it was meant to be a kind of weekly selfie diary that I'd continue through lockdown. The reason there's 4 is just because back then I was rubbish at taking selfies and I couldn't decide which one to post. So I posted all 4 that I took, because I was just like, okay, it's my face. Posted all of them, and yeah, it sort of went from there. Lockdown didn't really have a concrete ending, and it still kind of hasn't, not really. And I think I've been doing the photos for too long now. It's been over a year. I don't really think I can stop at this point. I really like it as like a Friday thing. I know people like look for it, and I get a good response, and it's also quite interesting. Like I look back through my Twitter feed or through my Instagram, and I can see a kind of journey that I've been on. I mean, not only in my lockdown hair, so still my lockdown hair. I have not cut it since before lockdown. Actually, that's a lie. My spouse did cut it. They cut it very well. It took 3 hours. And then they decided they were like, never again. So yeah, this is lockdown hair minus 3 months. It used to be a lot shorter. But yeah, I like them. I like this sort of weekly thing. It's nice. It's a nice thing. It's branding. It's friendly. It's fun. It's what it's all about, right? Bit of fun. Okay. Do you agree with me that if you have kids, it would be hilarious to give them names like Ballpoint, Bic, and Mont Blanc? It would be hilarious, but also very cruel. And I think that if I did that, I'd have to make a lot of money first so that they would never have to ever get a job, ever. It's the only way I could make it like less of a criminal offence, I think. Right. What do you think about including character flaws in the sci-fi genre? I've rarely seen addiction, mental health issues, etc. Okay, a lot of characters in books have been through or are put through trauma, and mental health issues often come from trauma. And I kind of find it amazing you've not seen much of that in sci-fi, because I mean, alright, okay, I watched Age of Ultron yesterday. I'm watching all the way through the Avengers films. And, I've done it once, I think, before, and it's well worth it, and I'm doing it again. And those films are full of trauma-related mental health issues. I mean, okay, right, off the top of my head. Iron Man 3 is basically about his PTSD following the first Avengers movie and the attack on New York, and the fact that he had to fly out through a wormhole in space with a nuke, and basically it was a one-way trip and he didn't expect to survive, and he has massive problems after that, and Iron Man 3 is all about those problems, and I think it's great for that reason. The character of Bucky Barnes is an example of like a hero character who struggles long term with mental health issues following his experiences. Natasha Romanoff, she struggles with her childhood trauma, which becomes especially evident in Age of Ultron. She has proper flashbacks related to her training and the horrible things that happened to her in her childhood, and it really throws her off and affects her. It's this very emotional moment in the film. Everything following Infinity War, because half the population just goes all dusty and disappears. That's pretty traumatic. Okay, also Nebula and Gamora, who were raised by Thanos, and both of those characters exhibit massive child of narcissistic parenting abuse patterns, especially Nebula. Like, they are messed up. She is particularly messed up and kind of tragic. And thinking just about the recent things, WandaVision is basically a series about Wanda's grief and PTSD. It's an entire series dedicated to her grief and kind of coping mechanism that goes horribly wrong around that. It's all mental health related. I mean, I'm really not sure what sci-fi you've been looking at, but if I can do an off the top of my head list like that from the Avengers, I'm pretty sure it's everywhere. Lieutenant Ford from Stargate Atlantis. Sorry, Lieutenant, if you're in America. In the UK it's the same spelling, but we say Lieutenant. Anyway, Lieutenant Ford from Stargate Atlantis, because he gets addicted to Wraith bile stuff that he has to cut out of the wraiths. And he goes on a very interesting journey through that, and he sort of becomes almost a leader of a vigilante force that are all taking this wraith bile, and all of them are like junkies on it, basically. And that's really interesting. So yeah, I think that it's definitely, those things are definitely covered in sci-fi. And I mean, for one, my book, The Dex Legacy, is just entirely built on trauma and mental health problems. And yeah, actually substance abuse as well is covered in that because of the treatments they go through. And, you know, they're all given stimulants and stuff before battle, and they have these routine crash parties where everybody's just, you know, and they really love the moment when they go on the stimulants. I mean, it's not addiction, but it's definitely exploring that kind of problematic substance use in military scenarios. So yeah, I genuinely think sci-fi is not lacking for the exploration of these subjects. Moving on. How do you feel about cryptocurrency? Okay. How do I feel about cryptocurrency? And would I ever include cryptocurrency in any of my world building? I think cryptocurrency is interesting. I honestly don't know enough about it to feel anything as such. I guess I could use it in one of my books. It's not come up yet, to be honest, but if it did, I would. There we go. Those are the extent of my feelings on that one. What's one book that you read that inspired something that you wrote? Whew. Okay, so it's hard to pinpoint a single book. I mean, honestly, everything I write is an amalgamation of anything and everything that I've ever taken in, which is why my stuff tends to be quite weird. It's not like, you know, formulaic. It's not just one thing, it's lots of things smashed together. Okay, so there was actually an essay I was reading a while back, and it was about how so much of writing by women is based on the concept of like escape, and it's about like escaping the domestic. And the essay talked about the Gothic genre and the tradition of narratives that include, like, narratives by women that include wild places and often epic chase scenes across wild landscapes. And all of this is an antidote to the reality for most women, which was, I mean, and for a lot of women still is, domestic servitude. And I mean, I'm talking about a lot of women around the world. We, you know, we like to think that a lot has changed. We have a long way to go. And yeah, the reality is that for a lot of women, domestic servitude is their life. And so I was reading this, and I was thinking about inverting norms, as one does. And I thought about how the men in these stories, and one of the points that was made is that the men rule the house and get to leave it, whereas the women don't have that agency. But then I thought, how screwed would men be if women didn't let them come home? And I mean, where would they go? If all home spaces were closed to men and there was nowhere for them to return to? What if instead of escaping the domestic, what if women decided to own it completely and shut men out? And that's where part of the idea behind my short story, 1,000 Silent Feet, came from. And I'll link below. And the extremes in that situation are all based on inverting norms or extrapolating ideas in gender norms to their extreme. I can't remember what the essay was called. It was a lot about, there was Mary Shelley in there, and, you know, obviously. It'll come to me, maybe. But yeah, really good essay. And started the cogs whirring. So yeah, that was good. I recommend reading essays, theory and criticism essays around books, and around authors and around like patterns in writing. because they tend to be really, really fascinating, and they tend to give you a window into those books that you've read, but you might not have thought of that angle, and you're reading the opinion of somebody very learned who has a different angle on it to you. It's all very worthwhile, and yeah, obviously it can really trigger ideas and get the cogs whirring, and I love that story, A Thousand Silent Feet. It's interesting. I'm really proud of it, and yeah, and it all came from that. What is the geekiest t-shirt you own? Hard question. Genuinely. Okay, so the Geek Measure, I think, depends on how deep your knowledge has to be in order to understand it. So my if found, please return to Stargate address, that would be up there, because it's just a specific Stargate reference. It doesn't say Stargate on it. It just references it. You'd have to know. And also my over encumbered and cannot run t-shirt, which is just brilliant, and that's a specific Skyrim reference. Those would probably be the nerdiest. Although Trekyards are sending me a couple of t-shirts because I gave them a shout out in the last video, and here I am giving them another one. Okay, t-shirts work, people. So yeah, I think maybe those would be my, they haven't arrived yet, but when they do, those will probably be my most nerdy t-shirts, because that will be representing a fandom of a thing, not just the thing itself, so very niche. Trekyards basically is a YouTube video that talks about Star Trek stuff, and it's very cool and very chill, and I love it, and the guys are great, and yeah, so I'm giving them another shout out. As I say, t-shirts work. If you want to send me a t-shirt, you can probably bribe me very cheaply to mention your thing. There we go. Do you have any tips to get a book? No. Do you have any tips to get a first book published? Okay, I'll get back to you as soon as I manage it. All limbs crossed on that. I'm still very much in the process. Really hoping it happens. Whatever way it does, it will be coming out. I've made promises to everybody. The Dex Legacy will be coming out. But yeah, I would like to get it traditionally published if I can. But self-publishing is a totally legit option these days. Has a lot of merits to it, especially as an author in terms of freedom aspects. And so yeah, I mean, one way or another, it's gonna be coming. But yeah, I haven't managed it yet, so I'll get back to you as soon as I know. What is your strategy process for editing, going from rough first draft to second in particular, if that is even your workflow? Okay, so that's changed with every book that I've written, so no real pattern. I just kind of, it's not changed with every book, it shifts slightly with every book. Generally, it's sort of get the words down, get an outside view using my usual tools and processes for assessing narrative, as a framework after first draft. So I'll include links to articles below, but it basically allows you to sort of take a step back and look at your book as a whole, just to see what you've got. One of these things is called, I call it heat mapping, where you list out the chapters and then you mark out the level of action or tension in each chapter with a sort of traffic light system. So green is chill, yellow is on edge, orange is, getting pretty tense, red is full all out fights and conflicts, okay? And generally speaking, what you want to aim to do, I guess, is have more green at the beginning and more red at the end. And by doing this, you can sort of track exactly how tense, how the tension builds in your novel. And it sort of gives you an outside perspective and helps you to see it, because otherwise it's just a massive clump of words and you don't really get an idea of it, of the individual component parts. So yeah, I'll link below that I wrote an article on this. I don't know anyone else who does it, but I do know some people have read that article and been like, yes, this really helps. So yeah, good thing. After doing that, I go through and do a rough line edit, and I fill in the gaps and stuff, move things around, to make things work better. When I'm first drafting, sometimes if things are taking, just killing me, I'll just put in brackets, something happens here, not something like normally it's a bit more detailed than that, and then close brackets, move on. So the next stage, line edit, and then as I'm going through, fill in the gaps, fill out what things happen there, to make it work better. Then ideally I let it sit for a bit after that and go back to it, and then I go through it again. And once I start adding things that no longer add value or substance to what I've got, that's when I send it to an alpha reader for an outside perspective. And that's draft 1. So when it comes back and the alpha reader has given you their thoughts, then you start on draft 2. So I would call draft 1 that whole process. It's in draft 1. So for me recently, I sent book 3 to my alpha reader in a rough first draft state, because I'm well ahead. Book 1 is in publisher submission right now. I had to get it all out of my head and down, but I'm so ahead of the timeline on this. And the reason I don't want to sort of shape it up too much, because if we do make a deal with a publisher and I go with an editor, and then they want loads of changes, that could change everything in books 2 and 3. So there's a chance that a lot could change. I don't want to work really, really hard on the entire trilogy and then it turns out so much I've got to rewrite the whole thing. So rough first draft, but I know my alpha reader really wanted to know what happens at the end, and I love them, and so I basically got the first draft down and sent it to them pretty much straight up, and with a full disclaimer of this isn't where I would want it to be before you see it, and that's at alpha stage. And then alpha reader will come back with probably comments about structure, points where they were falling asleep, points, or struggled to get through it, points where things went too fast and they were like, whoa, okay, we need more breathing space here, or we're not getting enough emotional space here. Too much is happening at once, and this one thing that happens is actually quite a big deal. We need some space around that for the characters to breathe and assess what's happened before we plunge in, because that moment is just getting lost. Things like that an outside perspective can really do for you that you just can't get from anyone else. And this is why I completely advocate for beta readers, alpha readers. Get it out there, get an outside perspective. Nothing can shape up your writing like an outside perspective. Really, really do it. It's terrifying, but do it. Right. Have you thought about starting a new project not involving the current series you are working on? I have. I've got a couple of ideas in the works, and one of them is completely different, a completely different genre. I used to think of myself as a sci-fi writer specifically, and although that's true, I do kind of think that I'll write in whatever genre the story calls for. One of my short stories that's been accepted to an anthology recently, that one's a gas lamp fantasy. So that's completely different. It's in a completely different world and realm, and I really enjoyed doing that. It's like splashing cold water on the brain. It's sort of like, whoa, okay, yeah, there's other things and other angles to play with, and that's what story writing's all about. It's like playing. It's playing with ideas. Favorite Sean Connery movie quote? I'm loving these questions. I think the 11,000 Twitter followers Q&A, it was all quite serious questions, and you know, this is this is great fun. Okay, favorite Sean Connery movie quote. Okay, so I did actually write down an answer for this one ahead of time because I had to think about it. Serious question, right? Very serious. So the one that I landed on reasonably quickly actually was, she talks in her sleep. Okay, so I love him in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, and that line is so class because, like, the preceding line is, how did you know she's a Nazi? And he says, she talks in her sleep. And it says so much with so little. Like, perhaps this is just writer goals speaking here. I do try to do the same with my scripts for my audio drama. Just little things like that hint at something much bigger, but don't actually say it explicitly. And yeah, so she talks in her sleep. Perfectly delivered as well. I love that movie. Should a severed limb be regarded as just a flesh wound or something more serious? Okay, it depends on your species, I'm guessing, because if you're an arachnid or an anthropod, then you've probably got limbs to spare. But if you're a human, I mean, that's 25% of your overall limb count, so I would say it's much more than just a flesh wound. But I do appreciate the enthusiasm and dedication of the knight in that scene. Monty Python, by the way, if you don't know. If you don't know, please, no. So Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That one. Right. Do penguins have knees? Yes, penguins have knees. Otherwise they couldn't walk. And if they fell over, there's no way they could get back up again without knees. Yes, they do. And I did Google this to check. So I know I'm right. Apparently it's a very common question. Okay, last question here. Okay, would you consider a writer's retreat? Yes, absolutely. They sound heavenly. Get a bunch of people together and, encourage each other to write and talk about writing. It's like the writing community in person. It's like my Discord in person. I love my Discord. It's really friendly, and we all help each other. It's nice. This came from one of my Discord people. I love you guys. Okay, right. So that's that. How long have we been going? 48 minutes and 14. Okay, I think that's long enough. Thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Normally I do, but hopefully I've been a little bit useful to you there, answering your questions. Yeah, hopefully. And thank you so much for the follows, and thank you so much for the questions. This was really fun. And yeah, until next time, if there is a next time, who knows? I might reach 13,000 followers, and then we'll be here again. So yeah, more questions to follow, I expect. Thank you, everybody. And yeah,